Ya Allah, Subhanallah, Ya Allah, Alhamdulillah, Ya Allah, La ilaha, Allahu Akbar, Ya Allah, Subhanallah, Ya Allah, Alhamdulillah, Ya Allah, La ilaha, Allahu Akbar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Did you know that the food you eat may kill you? Well, if you're trying to avoid being killed, you need to sit tight and watch the rest of this show. This is the part 2 of food safety with my guest Amatu Subu Osman, who is a regulatory officer at the Food and Drugs Authority of Ghana. You're welcome again to today's Woman, the African Pride. My name is Hiba Farouk, so we're just going to go straight into the questions without wasting much time because we have a lot of things to cover which are very important. So please pay absolute attention and let's get informed. You're welcome again to the show. Okay, so to move to our second set of questions, and tell us about food storage, the preservation, and the things that it entails.
Okay, so food storage and preservation basically is another aspect of food safety.
Right.
And this basically looks at processes involved in keeping the food from going bad, from the farm to the point where it's consumed.
Right.
And then there are so many ways we use to preserve our food. Sometimes we boil our food, we fry our food, we freeze our food, we refrigerate our food. And for modern times now, we can foods just to ensure that the food is preserved till such a time that it can be consumed. So basically, that is what I have to say.
Okay. So moving to the next question, what are the types of food storage and what are some of the foods we can store at home?
Okay. So basically the type of food storage, we can group them into two. We have the dry storage and we have the cold storage. And under the cold storage, we further have the freezing and refrigeration. So depending on the nature of our food, that will determine where the food will be stored. So say you have your you have your rice, your staple food type, rice, your yam, your fly and all that. We know these should be at the dry storage area in a cool, dry place, clean place. Then when we have our meat products, we have our fish products.
Right.
Depending on the time that we need to use it, should also be stored in our freezers. Then our vegetables, our bread, ready to eat foods, our fruits and vegetables also goes into the fridge. So basically, that's that. Yeah.
All right. So, what are some of the? So now you've spoken about the appropriate ways of storing food and how to categorize them into the dry, the food, the meat and meat produce, fish and fish produce, and ready to eat products. So, what are some of the inappropriate food storage practices that we are likely, to practice?
Okay. So here again, now let's look at from the time that we purchase the food to the house. So you'd realize that when things that we normally do when we go to the market to buy our food products, say you are buying your meat, your fish, you have to buy vegetables, you bag all in one bag. That is not safe. So at that point you start contaminating the food products, cross-contamination before you even get home. Or you buy your eggs which have fecal matter, and once they have fecal matter, it means that they have salmonella, which can be dangerous and it can lead to making food. It can make food unsafe. With your vegetables, again, it can lead to cross-contamination. So at the market point, depending on how we bag our food products, can lead to this cross-contamination, and that is inappropriate. Or even we buy our household chemicals, say you buy your soap and you bag it with your food products. So sometimes you realize that the food will take the odor of the chemicals. Then, so once we get home, what happens in some homes is that you store your food products just on the bare floor. So you have your yam, it's just placed on the floor. Your plantain is on the floor. And you should bear in mind that once it's on the floor, it gives room for microorganisms to have easy access. Sections at which you store the foods on is difficult to clean because it's sometimes difficult to lift and clean. So you end up leaving those sections, and those are the areas the microorganisms are interested in. And then also in our still in our dry storage areas, you have your containers with your food products like your flours, your rice and all that. Sometimes you realize that they are not covered. You just leave them opened. And once they are open, there again, it gives room for microorganisms.
Right.
So these are some of the practices. Then when we look at our practices, that is a dry storage aspect. Looking at the cold storage system too, we have to make sure that we segregate our food products properly. So in your freezer, if you are storing your, say, your French fries with your chicken and frozen or raw meat products, make sure that you segregate so that we don't have cross-contamination occurring.
Right.
Then in the fridge, if you have your, say, your bread, your cooked rice and your fresh meat that maybe you are thawing that to use later, you should make sure that the bread is on top of the shelf with your cooked rice in the middle and the fresh meat at the bottom, just to ensure that you don't have juices from the meat, that is if it were to be on top dripping onto the bread or the cooked rice. The reason being that bread, once it's baked, it doesn't really undergo any form of cooking again. Even if it's toasting, it's not enough to do away with the microorganisms that may have gotten onto it.
Water is stored around, raw fish and all of that. Sometimes when you're drinking water,
you can smell it.
You can smell it, and it doesn't seem to be right.
Yeah. And this reminds me. Okay, before I chip that in, let me just finish with this.
Right, sure.
There are times that we open our canned products and we don't finish using it. We leave it in the can, then we store it in the fridge. That is one of the practices that is inappropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I fall into that.
I know a lot of other viewers too are likely to.
When you prefer your milk, you want to put in the fridge. Right.
Ideally, it should be put in a container with a lid, nicely covered, a clean container, and put in the fridge. Then, and what I wanted to chip in, there are a lot of homes, or should I say homes, who buy sachet water, who drink sachet water. You realize that they buy these sachets water and they just put it on their bare floor. And then when you put it on the bare floor for a longer time, it takes the odor of the floor. So you realize that when you are taking the water, then you can sort of smell it's not really comfortable drinking. And then, so we'll talk about what to do to ensure that we don't have these occurring. Then again, so now I've spoken about when we get it from the market, then it goes to the house for storage. For instance, you have your salads. Ideally, once you cut your salads and then they are not ready, you are not ready to consume, they should be in cold storage. But then in most instances, you find salads being put at room temperature. Food products that foods that we cook in our kitchens are left in the pots and dish from the pot, and it also at room temperature. All these are inappropriate practices because, as I mentioned earlier in the first instance, it gives room for microorganisms to grow in these foods.
These are very,
so
very
when and then okay, so and also we sometimes have our leftovers left on the burner overnight, and that is another thing that so these are things that
so in the part one, for people that did not watch, you made mention of washing hands. So after ensuring that you're buying from the right place or the right areas, you're storing in the right areas, you're cooking it and you're eating it at the right hot temperature. If you don't wash your hands properly, everything it
defeats the purpose.
Defeats the purpose. It's very, very interesting. So we have to pay a lot of attention to what we eat, how we eat it, and how we store whatever we eat. So moving on to my next question, how do you store foods at home to ensure their safety and quality? So if they're still good enough to be consumed.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, it starts from the market. When you buy the food products, let's make sure that we bag them separately. You have your raw food products like your fish, your meat. They should be bagged separately from your
you're ready to eat.
You're ready to eat, like your bread, your vegetables, and all that. You should bag separately.
Right.
Your household chemicals should be bagged separately from your food products. Once you get home, and then you should sort the food, clean properly. And as I mentioned, depending on the nature of the food, that will determine where you store it. So if you have your tubers of yam, your plantain, they should be on pallets. They shouldn't be on the direct floor. On pallets, such that air can pass through easily. Then when cleaning too becomes easy, because you're able easily clean under the pallets to ensure that you don't have any food debris and all that.
Right.
Then also, still at the dry storage area, when we are storing our dry food products like our flours, our rice and all that in containers, ideally they should be properly covered and labeled. So you buy your flour from the market, it's not good to open the bag and just leave it there and transfer into a container with a lid, and then check the date on the bag and transfer, just label it to make sure that you're able to track, to ensure that your food products doesn't go bad, and then you still consume it. Then again, our water that we mentioned, they should also be on pallets. They should be off the floor to ensure that we don't have them imbibing the odor from the floor and all that.
Thank you so much on showing us the best way to store our foods properly, and I like that you reiterated on the segregation and organization of it properly in our refrigerators in our pantries. Refrigerators for our cold produce, our meat and meat produce, and then our pantries for our dry product, our tubers, rice, raw rice, and whatnot. Now, before I don't know if we should do this question before. Okay, let's talk about if you've visited a restaurant or an eatery, and then you after consuming food, you feel like the food wasn't handled well, and then you probably had to have a runny stomach, or something just felt off with it, and you feel like you suspect that they don't handle the food well in the kitchen. Is there any sort of office you can go and report to, so that other people do not have to go through the same things you have gone through? Okay.
So as I earlier on mentioned, the Food and Drugs Authority, as part of its mandate, it regulates these food service facilities to ensure that they are meeting regulatory standards. So, and then the Food and Drugs Authority has a consumer complaint desk. So as a consumer, once you go to a facility, you buy a food product, and then it causes discomfort to you. Maybe you running diarrhea, or you are vomiting and all that. You should go to the Food and Drugs Authority. Ask for the consumer complaint desk. You'll be given a form to fill. So at this point, it's always good to have a mental record of what you've eaten, where you ate, because you need to provide details of where you ate, what you ate. If you even have a sample of the food, it helps, so that it can help in the investigation. Or if you, as a consumer, or just you observe that a food facility is doing something fishy, maybe the hygiene, just anything that is fishy, things that can lead to foodborne illnesses, things that are you should report to the Food and Drugs Authority. Just give them the details with the location, and what happens is that your details will not be given to the one that they are investigating. You just go there to do your work, just to ensure that to make sure that things are going on.
Okay, all right. So for our viewers, straight from our regulatory officer, if you feel there's something suspicious or fishy about an eatery or a restaurant or any food vendor, and you feel like the authorities' attention should be drawn to it, you can go to the Food and Drugs Authority, file a complaint, be able to give accurate details on when you purchased the food, where you ate the food, and every other detail. So like Mrs. Amatus mentioned, that you have to have mental records of what you eat. So you don't just eat anything. You should be able to know that I ate this in the morning, that in the afternoon. So you'll be able to know that this problem is coming from this eatery, so that other people do not fall sick from the same place. And like she also rightfully mentioned, that it's going to be kept anonymous. So your name won't be put all over the complaint and people won't come for you. So this is very important information that we could all use to protect ourselves and the community from getting foodborne diseases. Yeah. Now, moving on to my next question, what do you look out for at the market when you go and buy food products or produce?
Okay, so again, as I earlier on mentioned, you have to make sure that the places that you are buying from are clean. That is key. Right. You should make sure that you are not buying food products that are displayed on the floor. They should be on tables. An example I would give is, for instance, people go to the market, they want to buy their tilapia, and then some are displayed on the trays with flies hovering around.
That's correct.
That is not advisable.
Right.
It's always good to buy from the ones that are stored in freezers to ensure that the cold chain, once the meat products, the ice in it melts, it gives room for microorganisms to start reacting on them. Right. So these fish products that are normally on the trays, that is what happens because germs are interested in nutritious foods. So once this fish is melting at room temperature, it gives room for them
that. The germs also like the quality foods.
Yeah, that's what they like. So it gives room for them too.
So when you have these, a tilapia or a fish or whatever it is on the trays in the open, people feel like, including me, the way you take it home and you cook it, you put it through heat and it's cooked, you've killed all your germs, so you don't have any problem.
That is where I mentioned earlier that once microorganisms are such that they multiply with time, and some multiply very fast. And as they are multiplying, they are releasing their byproducts into the food in the form of toxins. So you buy these food products and you feel that, I'll cook it, it will kill the germs. You may kill the germs, succeed in killing the germs, but the heat will not kill the toxins. And that is a problem. Yeah.
So it means that you can have properly cooked food, eat it hot, wash your hands, but then if you do not buy from the right places and clean areas, you are still consuming some toxins. Wow.
And then there again, what to look out for, you go to the market to buy your fresh meat. What do you look out for? Do you buy from the one on the table that the flies are just hovering around? There are some that are in cages nicely, then protected from flies and all that, because these flies, you don't know where they've been to. Some, if there's any toilet facility, refuse them around, they hover around everywhere, and they carry germs from one place to the other. So you have to ensure that you are buying your meat from clean places. Then there are times you go to the market to buy your fruits and vegetables, your tomatoes. What the checks you should do, you have to ensure that you are buying wholesome products. Sometimes we want to cut costs, and then you end up buying things that are maybe showing signs of rot, but you feel that is cheaper. We have to check all these things. Then another thing too that we should look out for, when you are buying your tin products, you should check the expiry dates on the tins. It's very key. You have to check that the tin is not dented. You have to check that it's not rusty.
Could you please throw light on the denting? How does
denting, as in
the can has been
indented. It goes in. Some maybe it fell and there's a pressure, so you realize that the normal cylindrical form is deformed. Let's say deformed.
But then my case is, how does the packaging being a bit deformed affect my food?
So you know that, or let's say the tin that is used to for the can. Normally when you open it, you see an inner lining in it. Some are white, some are gold in color. They come in different colors. And then that lining protects the food from reacting with the tin itself. So once the can is dented, it breaks that lining, and the food starts reacting with the tin itself. And even when the can is dented, sometimes it can lead to maybe boring a small hole, a leakage or something. So that exposes the food, and it starts reacting because it makes the food unsafe. So and then also we have to check that the cans are not rusty or even bloated. There are times that Again,
really?
yeah, there are times that you go to buy canned foods and you realize that they are bloated. All these are signs that is not safe.
Safe to eat.
So, and then again, let me chip this in. For those who buy their drinks whilst the car is moving, maybe you are in a public transport and you want to buy a drink. It's always good to check the date before you take it.
Because you're buying
it's difficult. It's difficult to check the date before you buy because maybe your car is moving.
Yeah.
But then it may come at a cost to you, but it's better to be safe.
Be safe than
so once
sorry.
you buy, sometimes you are hungry, you just want something quick. You buy it, you just open and you start drinking. Ideally, you should check the date because some of those hawkers, you might never know. Maybe a product is expired and then they trying to push it away.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. But before you finish, I would want you to be able to explain to us the difference between expiry dates. What does that mean? Does that mean that the food is completely gone? Maybe as having the food, it expires tomorrow, or it expired this morning. Can I still eat it? And then there is also best before. What does that mean? Before we wrap the show up quickly.
Okay. For the expiry date, once let's say a product tells you that it's expiring on this date, say 1st of January 2021, it doesn't give you say it's expiring in the morning. It just tell you that by the close of that day, this food is not safe.
Right.
That is what it's telling you. And then we don't just sit down and then state expiry dates. These are things that products are put on the shelf. We observe it for a period of time to see how long it can sit. They are tested to ensure that, okay, let's say this food product can go like a year.
Right.
Then when we have best before, so you say again, it says that best before say December 2020. There are some that comes without a day. It just says month and a year. It means that by the 31st of that month, the safety of that food product cannot be guaranteed. So if you are consuming such a food, you are consuming it at your own risk.
Right. Okay, that was very, very much explained. We are very appreciative of you coming to the studios, Mrs. Amatu Subo Osman. Thank you so much for educating us on this very crucial issue. My name is Hiba Farouk. We've run out of time. I had a lot of things to talk about, but I can't tackle that right now. Thank you so much for coming here and educating us. I learned so much. Thank you so much. So from the Wahab Adam Studios, we'd like to say goodbye to you. This has been today's Woman, the African Pride. My name is Hiba Farouk. Do look out for our other episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
And there is no God beside him, the knower of the unseen and the seen. He is the gracious and the merciful God. Oh Allah, you are most great. He is Allah and there is no God beside him, the knower of the unseen and the seen. He is the gracious and the merciful God. Oh Allah, you are most great. Oh Allah, you are holy. Oh Allah, we praise you. Oh Allah, there is no God, you are most great. Oh Allah.